February 16th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I get a motion to open the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? At this point, we will be moving to our executive session. The executive session will be for collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I get a motion to move into exec? First, second, all in favor? Aye. All right. So for the public, we'll be back in approximately an hour at around 7 o'clock. Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, February 16th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board has just left our executive session, and we are back in public session. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please? Can I get a second? Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. So the first item on our agenda is the American Choral Directors Association National Honor Choir, made up of both high school and middle school students. And who is introducing them?
Yes, I will introduce them. Kim Duncan is with us. Kim Duncan is one of our middle school music teachers and choral director. She was going to be joined by our high school choral director, Erica Detmer, but she couldn't make it. So Kim and Erica chaperoned and worked with a number of our middle school and high school students to attend the American Choral Director Association National Honor Choir, which performed last weekend in Boston, Massachusetts. So I'd like to invite Kim up to tell a little bit about their trip, about how the students were selected, some performances and workshops they were a part of, and then I know we have some students who might sing a little ditty for us. So thank you, Kim. Take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Hochreiter, Dr. Muller, Mr. Catalan, and the Hendrick Hudson Board of Ed. Thank you so much for inviting us to be honored tonight. My name is Kimberly Duncan, and I am the Middle School Choral Director and K-12 Music Department Leader. Tonight I will be speaking on behalf of both myself and my dear friend and colleague, Erica Detmer, our High School Choral Director, who unfortunately could not be here this evening. I'd like to start with her words first. Good evening, everyone. I am so disappointed that I cannot be here tonight to talk with you in person. Last week was the 9th time I had the privilege to bring a few select Hendrick Hudson students to an ACDA honor choir event. In the past, we've traveled to Rhode Island, Texas, Baltimore, Tennessee, Boston, Kansas, Boston again, Atlantic City, and Rochester. Every other year, ACDA hosts a regional event, and then in the opposite year, a national event. We've always had the fortune to have anywhere from 1 to 4 students participate each year. This year, we had 11 high school students, more than any other school that participated. Each year, ACDA selects a mixed honor choir group, which sings standard choral literature, and a second choir that represents another genre of music. In the past, these other genres included Chinese repertoire, musical theater repertoire, repertoire by women composers, South American repertoire, and this year, for the very first time, a gospel honor choir. The gospel honor choir became an inspiration and example for the ACDA choral community. Our student singers rose to a level of musicality and style I have never witnessed before in all the years I've been attending. They lifted the spirit in the room and brought joy to everyone present, which was obvious by the fact they received a standing ovation from choir teachers after almost every song. You can only imagine how difficult this genre of music is to perform, yet their conductor, Dr. Wise, said, "Anyone can sing gospel music if you sing from the heart." And boy, did they. I loved that Dr. Wise constantly told the singers, "You are wonderfully and marvelously made." He lifted up their spirits and inspired them to sing from the heart. I know I will never forget the pride I felt as a teacher as I watched my incredible students experience a life-changing event. I know that someday when they think back to high school, this will be at the top of their fondest memories. Congratulations, singers. I would like to echo what Mrs. Denler said and extend a congratulations to our 3 middle school musicians who performed 6 incredibly challenging pieces under the direction of Dr. Jessica Nathalis from the University of North Texas. The students also had the opportunity to meet and work with 2 composers of the pieces they performed. After 2 years of limited music making and concerts, it was heartwarming to see our students excited and enthusiastic about music in a way that I have never seen before. They brought me to tears at their concert on Saturday morning, and my heart was full of love and pride. Before we have the students sing 2 extremely short excerpts from their concert, I would like to ask one of our students, Daniel Salim, to comment on his experience from this week.
Hello, my name is Daniel Salim. I am the president of the Hendrick Hudson High School Student Government. I am a senior leader within the Hendrick Hudson Harmonizers. I'm the president of Menso Forte, and I am an actor within the Hendrick Hudson High School Drama Club. I think that the most principal event and the most principal lesson that many of our students have taken away from our trip in Boston is that music has this incredible power to bring people together. All my life, ever since I started middle school and ever since I started music within elementary school, taught by Miss Choral, who taught us that all things shall perish from under the sky, I have learned that music is a community where people can come together, no matter their background, and share something that is very, very beautiful. I went to the All-State Chorus this December, where I met the co-chair, Mr. Dumas, who actually is friends with Mr. Hochreiter. So that is just a great example of how people within a state, within a nation, can come together under the voice of music and sing something and create something beautiful that we can all appreciate. Thank you.
We have Addison Valentino, Alex Numeroff, Eden Akhtar, and Alec Elkin from the Middle School Honors Choir performing In the Heart of the World by Bob Chilcott. Under the direction of student Sophia Sklar.
We will be performing a short excerpt of the song Lift Your Voice and Sing, which was arranged by Dr. Wise, our conductor, and was performed for the first time at the ACDA conference.
Come together. The world is better to be overcome. Lift your voice and sing, sing out the King, sing out. Lift your voice and sing, sing, sing out and bring up. Lift your voice and sing, come everybody and sing, sing out the King, sing out. Lift your voice and sing, sing, sing out and bring up. Lift your voice and sing, till we come together, till you're feeling better, till we stand as one. Lift your voice and sing, sing out and and sing.
Thank you very much.
Would the board like to ask any questions or any comments for our chorus students?
I just have one comment.
Okay.
That was awesome. That was really good.
He would stand.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming tonight and for sharing your talents with us. It was really beautiful to hear your voices and to hear your enthusiasm for the songs that you shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you, if I may, to Kim and Erica and our music staff. A lot of these activities, if you think of student athletes, their practices and games are after school. For these students, they travel quite a bit, far and wide, to be able to compete with and compete against some of the nation's best. So thank you for your time commitment. It's not easy. There's a lot of prep work that goes into auditioning. They get the sheet music ahead of time. Erica and Kim rehearse with them, so when they show up, they can perfect their craft rather than start from scratch. And I know it's not just a show up and play or perform sort of event. So thank you all for your number of hours and commitment outside the school day. Thank you.
I'm just going to echo what everybody else has said already. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to come and join us. It is really wonderful to see the incredible talent we have here at Hendrick. So thank you again. Thank your parents for letting you have this time with us tonight as well. So thank you. If you would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, we'd be happy to have you. If you would like to exit so that you can go and do your homework and other things that you might like to enjoy at home, please feel free to do that as well. All right, so that will bring us to our consent agenda this evening. Does anybody have anything to pull from our consent agenda? Yes.
Item 4.3 fiscal.
Item 4.3 fiscal.
Oh, sorry, I didn't use the. As item. Hello. 4.3.
That's still not working.
4.3 fiscal.
Jen, did you have something to pull as well?
I'd also like to pull 4.4 personnel.
Does anybody else have anything to pull this evening? All right, so can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, so items pulled from the consent agenda. 4.3 is our fiscal section. This section does contain contract agreements. We cannot discuss contract agreements in public session. Were there any questions on anything that were not related to contracts?
No.
No. All right, thank you. So can I get a motion to approve fiscal 4.3?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Our next section is, our next item removed from the consent agenda is item 4.4, personnel. And did you have a question?
I just wanted clarification. I noticed on the personnel, the resignation of this high school nurse, and I just wanted to confirm what we would be doing in the interim until a full-time nurse was on staff.
Yeah, the committee met today. I even think recommended another candidate to take over as the high school nurse. In the interim, we've had a sub every day who has been running the nurse's office since, and we anticipate that person to be here during the transition.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions about 4.4? All right, can I get a motion to approve fiscal item 4.4 personnel, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. And that will bring us to our superintendent's report.
Yes, I'd like to invite up Janet Rose and Diane Hughes. Janet and Diane are teachers of ours at Furnace Woods Elementary School. And over the summer, they had a very forward-thinking conversation and brainstorm in preparation of our transition and adoption of the Princeton plan. And their idea gained great traction, was discussed with their colleagues and the principals, 3 elementary school principals. And the other day we did a write-up and put it on our website and Facebook and had some pictures or videos. But I wanted to invite Janet and Diane to share a little bit about how their brainstorm became reality and offer some perspective in terms of preparing for the Princeton plan and some of the activities going on in their classroom. So ladies, welcome and take it away.
Thanks everybody. So we were asked to talk about the Pen Pal project. Janet and I have worked at Furnace Woods. We just realized 30 years. We started together in 1992. So we're the old timers, and this is our last year as a K-5 building. So over the summer around Chris Ganning's pool, she retired. We tried to figure out what are we going to do our last year. How are we going to, make it a great year as a Furnace Woods family, and how we're going to bring all the schools together. So each month we thought we would do one activity as a whole school, and also one activity as just a staff. So February we decided was a good time to do Pen Pals. And we thought, let's do it with the whole district. How can we bring everybody together, get to meet the other kids before they all end up meeting next year anyway. So we thought it'd be a great idea. We brought it to our principal. She brought it to everybody loved it. And we just started. So we just sent out the letters, and Jenna will talk about what's happening in each of the grade levels.
Yeah, so grade levels, we all talked at our grade level meetings of what we wanted to do as a grade level. So kindergarten has a buddy in another school, and they're exchanging their self-portraits and other ideas and thoughts throughout the year. First grade wrote Valentine pen pals, and they talked about what they liked, and they drew pictures for each other, and we're going to do some more activities across the district with them. Second grade, they were sending Valentine's greetings to students in another building. Third grade sent it by email, and they talked about their favorite things to do on snow days, and they sent class photos. The fourth graders were paired with a class from another building, and they started with a Google Meet to introduce themselves, and then the children are writing letters to their pen pals, and they're hoping to write several letters back and forth over the next few months. Fifth grade students were paired individually, and the pen pal letters were sent for Valentine's Day, and the kids love sending and receiving the letters. New letters will be written now and be sent after the break as well.
So it's been great so far. The kids are liking it, and it's one way to bring us all together, bring all the kids together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's fantastic, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments for our wonderful teachers?
Just an ingenious idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank
very
you.
much. Our next item is to look at some projected class sizes next year. Obviously, as we move to grade band schools, where Frank G. will have King 1, BD will have 2 and 3, and Furnace Woods 4 and 5. This is a document that our team looks at daily, if not hourly, and making adjustments in terms of students who are moving in or moving out of the school district. So a number of important data points here, and this data is as of today. I'll start at the bottom right-hand corner. That number, that right-hand column talks about how many class sections we have today. If you walk through our 3 elementary schools, you will see this many first grade, 10 kindergarten, so on and so forth, for a total number of sections of 53. When you look at moving all of our children today, our current enrollment, into next year's configuration, and of course kindergarten is an estimate, but it's a pretty solid estimate based on registrations to date, there are a number of options available to the board in terms of class size. The board does have an established class size policy that is online. And so what we're showing are what we believe are 2 options. One option that you'll see in the second column under each school is the 22-23 BOE policy. What those sections do is they take us to the fewest number of staff without breaking class size cap. All right, so it's basically a minimalist approach. How many teachers do we need minimally to be within our class size expectations? That is our policy. The optional, and then you will see what average class size looks like. The optional sections, optional 22-23 sections, is our team's recommendation as we slowly move toward implementing the Princeton plan. So if you look at Frank G, K1, our policy calls for 6 class sections. We can have as few as 6 class sections and still be well under the cap of 22. Average class size would be 20.8. Some classes would have 21, obviously others would have 20. Our recommendation is to bump that up 1 and have 7 sections. So average class size would be 17.9, call it 18. Now the difference here is that if you walk through Frank G next year and look at 7 kindergarten classes with an average class size of 17.9, the difference is you will see, I won't say 17.9, but you will see 18 children per classroom in kindergarten. You would not see that today, and you have not seen that in our current model. Our enrollment swings currently in kindergarten is by 5. Our fewest number of children in kindergarten is 14, and our most is 19. In first grade, our swing is 5. Fewest is 15, largest is 20. Same thing in second grade, 15 the low, 20 the high, all the way up to 5th grade, where we have a 5th grade section currently as few as 15, and depending on where you live, you may have as many as 21 students. So when you see an average class size on this document, it is a true average because all the children by grade level are in the same place at the same time. It's not contingent on your neighborhood. It's not contingent on enrollment in that neighborhood at that time. If you move to BB, you see that under, again, that second column in blue, we could have 7 second grade sections with an average class size, we'll call it 23, and still be within our policy. And 3rd grade, 6 sections and be within our policy of 20.8. Our recommendation is to add a section to 2nd grade, get that number to 20. Again, that would be 20 throughout every class section, not an average of 20. Not 25 in some and 15 in others. And then move on to Furnace Woods, same thing. We could have 26 and 25.9. We are recommending adding additional staff in each grade level for an average class size of 23 and 22.6. So the numbers in yellow, again, going back to where we began, we have 53 class sections today. We could have as few as 41. Our recommendation is basically to split the difference and have 46 class sections so that all of our sections are at least a few children under the cap. All right. The difference here is we would need a lot of children by grade level to move into the district at the same time to break the cap. We have had many conversations each spring and summer that sometimes we split sections just based on 1 or 2 kids moving in because a particular school is that close. And we've had situations where a particular school has gone from 26 kids in a section automatically to 14 because a child or 2 moved in. With our recommended staffing pattern, we have plenty of cushion and plenty of room if we need it to accept more children if they come in mass by grade level. So I know this was an important conversation. Certainly the community has asked about what average class size would look like. We talked about it last year throughout our deliberations. This was one of the more commonly asked questions that we have received from families, whether through survey, from PTA, or other conversations. And I'll use that as an opportunity to direct our families to our Princeton Plan dedicated website. There were some very significant updates that were made earlier this week in terms of a timeline for what to expect in terms of transition activities, but also some very specific FAQs were posted with regards to transportation, curriculum and instruction, and for those families who have a student that receives special education. So if you have not been on that website, please make sure you do. We tried to answer all the questions we received, so there's a lot to go through, but a lot of really good information. But one of the themes, of course, has been what will class size be? There was a fear a year ago that moving to this model would increase class size and make it very, very difficult for students to succeed. And as we continue our budget deliberations and get into closing our budget in the next number of months, you'll see our recommended path forward.
Does anybody have any questions? Al?
Joe, for the sake of clarity, so we're looking at right now, we have 53 sections, and some of those teachers right now are being paid for by our COVID relief funds, correct?
Correct.
And I think there's some confusion that when we're looking at these proposed class sizes for next year, are we looking at removing 7 positions or 7 positions plus anything that we had added with our COVID relief funds?
Yeah, so the added positions were a one-time shot. They were used 1 year to keep class size low as we transitioned from last year's model of somewhere in person and somewhere virtual to having every child in school every day. Those funds are not available next year. However, given the number of retirements that we had, particularly that impact the elementary level, and other vacancies or other staff reductions that moving to the Princeton Plan affords us, those funds are really no longer an issue. For example, the 3 retirees that the board approved a couple weeks ago more than covers the $400,000 we allocated toward those staff members this year. So even moving to a staffing pattern of 46, we haven't finished the schedule yet because we have to set the sections, and now what we'll do is we'll add music, we'll add art, phys ed. Margaret and Lisa will go through and do reading and special ed projections. There will be more cost savings there, but right now we have about a delta of 4 in addition to those 5 positions, because remember, the funding we received were dollars, not people.
Right.
So when we received that funding, we were able to hire staff that were less veteran, so they were lower on the salary schedule as opposed to those who were retiring and we're not replacing or almost more than double the outlay for the district. So we can't look at it as bodies, we have to look at it as dollars to dollars. So moving from 53 to 46, we'll still save significant dollars. If we went all the way to 41, certainly the savings would be greater. But I think the educational impact, especially a conversation we have had, and transitioning from a pandemic to an endemic, we believe it's educationally sound to only move to 46, but the funding is more than taken care of with the retirements.
Thank you.
I was just wondering about the FAQ and how those questions were determined. It was linked to the PTA survey, I believe, or?
Yeah, so we partnered with the elementary PTA members in the late fall and early winter, and they provided the survey to families. They asked, sent a couple reminders, and I think we received a little over 100 responses, and it was open-ended, and so we categorized the themes and the topics and tried to organize the questions into most frequently asked. It was a month ago, it was in January, I think January 19th, I presented the themes of the survey and said our next step is to get inside of those to start answering questions. So over the last number of weeks, our team has been going through those with principals, and we posted them today. So all of those questions were derived from a survey that came from elementary parents, from a survey they completed anytime between December and early January.
Thank you.
This might be more for Enrique, and I don't know if it's for maybe both of you. But, one of the things with the Princeton plan is we were going to have a certain amount of savings. I think we talked about $2 million in savings for 14 teachers over the course of 2 years retiring due to attrition and that just not being replaced, right? So now this number seems to be lower than that, but again, it's you talk about dollars to dollars. So how does this plan impact that overall savings that we were hoping for?
Yeah, so for purposes of developing our budget, we had to put a minimal number in before we came to you. The number that Enrique will share when he gives his budget update includes 46 teachers, all right? So when you look at what one of his final slides talks about projected budget increase, potential tax increase, that's with the 46 and the savings from the 46. What we will do if we move forward with 46, we will, as I said, we'll finish the schedule and look at all of those other staff members that are part of staffing and scheduling in the elementary. When we talked last year, we talked about all staff that impact elementary, not just classroom teachers. We're starting here with classroom teachers because certainly people wanted to know what average class size looked like. So in a half hour from now or so, when Enrique goes over his latest budget and talks about different updates we've received since last time, make sure that it includes the 46.
Okay, so we'll see how that compares to the original commitment of $2 million.
Yeah, well, when we were here a year ago, we weren't thinking of going significantly beneath our class size cap. We were looking at moving all of our children from the one model to the proposed, and a range of what the potential savings could be over a number of years, budget to budget. We have clearly heard from families. We've clearly heard from families about the transition and the significance of the transition, not just from a physical plant standpoint going to a new building, but everything related to the pandemic. So this recommendation does not have us meet our financial goal year one. We will reach it, but for educational opportunities and being able to reduce class size across the board by almost 2 kids per class, we're stating that we may need to lead with that, and the finances will continue to catch up in the out years.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see those numbers. Obviously, class size is important, but we also made a commitment around financials to get those savings.
So just for clarity, this is a proposal for year one, and then we look at it again as far as class sizes and caps for year 2 and forwards. That's when we might capture more, if not all, of the savings, unless the board at that point decided to revise the cap sizes for the classes.
Yeah, one of the, what we talked about last year was the wild card was the number of retirements we would receive versus non-retirements. And, for example, the savings to the district of someone retiring and not replacing versus not inviting someone back is double. It's almost $200,000 compared to $100,000. So, the models last year, that's why we always had a range, because we never know who would retire in any given year.
Anybody else have any questions about the class sizes, teachers, anything? Okay.
And just while we're on that, make sure you see our timeline graphic that we posted. I know that was important for folks to understand what to expect and when. So you see it's online as well, and it's actually on our banner or ticker on our website. But for what students and parents can expect over the next number of months, as you heard Janet and Diane mention, that the teachers are meeting regularly to plan some of these events. Margaret is meeting with the elementary principals. The principals are meeting with their staff. So over the next number of weeks, each principal will share some of the specifics with families and students about touring the schools, what to expect, questions, those sort of things. So these are really important milestones for us to meet to make sure everyone's aware and comfortable with the transition. And our last update is an exciting one.
Before we go to the last update, can I make sure we have no questions about the timeline? All right.
Our last update is an exciting one and nerve-wracking. It's there's a sense of urgency here. A year ago, the state budget was approved a little bit late, and a little bit late in the game for us to allocate funding toward developing or supporting a pre-K program. So again, this year, our school district has an allocation of $183,000, a little bit more than $183,000, with the potential of educating 34 children full day for pre-K. The difference is that these funds are baked into our foundation aid. For many, many moons, UPK, Universal Pre-K, used to be a grant that you would apply to, and it was a separate funding stream. You would apply to the state, you would say, here are our demographics, here's our need, here's how many children we want to serve, and the state would approve the plan and then give you the money. And oftentimes, the district had to front the money first and then get reimbursed. What's different is that the money is baked into our foundation aid. The problem is, we can't use this $183,000 for anything other than pre-K. So we can't use it to buy a school bus, we can't use it for curriculum and development, we have to use it to support a pre-K program. If we don't have a pre-K program, the state will ask for that money back and we will write them a check. So that's what's really, really important here. This is an entitlement, it's not an ask. The money is baked in, and we have to follow the rules to use it as opposed to ask for the money. All right. So we'll go to the third slide. I'll let Margaret take it away from here. She's been closely following this, and then we'll wrap up with an overview and potential timeline.
Okay, so basically, a lot of what Joe said is going to be repeated in the next couple of slides. Districts were allocated the money in their budget. We did not have the expansion grant that we had last year, so we will not have to file separately for this. We did, as all of you know, we did try to get something off the ground last year with local collaborators, and at the end, that process fell apart because, believe it or not, there are very strict guidelines for folks to partner in pre-K with the district, and unfortunately, local collaborators couldn't meet some of those needs on that timeline. I know some of them are hoping it will come around back this year, so we'll see. The funding formula is statewide. Every district is $5,400 per student if you do the math, and everybody gets that same allocation, understanding that some districts, depending upon where you are, get more money, but it's still $5,400 a student. They may get more seats. They are full-day seats. Years ago, the money was available for half-day programs. The state, the funding stream, changed their mind last year and said any new money as of last year is full-day only. So last year, we actually had districts that were able to run 2 programs if they chose to do so. The districts have the option of kicking in extra money, but they are not required to. So we can clearly say, this is what we've got, that's all we're going to use. At the end of the day, we can only support 34 seats. If I think locally in our region, everyone that is doing it right now, and it's Austin and Keystone have been doing it for years, but Croton came on board last year. Lakeland's been doing it for quite a number of years as well. It's done through a lottery because they cannot support every pre-K student that is available. So that's, they don't put any additional monies into the program. So that's exactly what Joe was talking about for us. We have 34 seats available should we go forward with this. Ready for the next slide? So if we were to build the program in-house, and remember we still have to, we are required to put an RFP, a request for proposal, out to the community and provide a 10% side deal with them, so they would get, I can't say 3.4, I'll say 3 or 4 seats that they would take care of in their facility. If no one comes forward that is qualified to collaborate, then we're able to take that back and we have all 34 seats. But the district is required to seek collaboration in the geographic district that we live in. So we would have to go through that process. The housing in the school system obviously would be a Frank G, K1 building. This would become a pre-K1 building. 2 classrooms, 2 teachers, 2 teaching assistants. The regulations for pre-K or a teacher and a TA for 17 students. If you go over that, you have to add a TA. We would not be looking at going over that because 17 and 17 is the 34 seats that we would be allotted with the funding. Next slide. So if we are fortunate enough to build this program, outside of issuing the RFP to the community, which is a big step, we would also go out to our parents and invite them to participate and to submit an application. And at some point in the coming weeks, we would run a lottery system to choose who those 34 students are. We would let parents know that they were selected. At the end of the day, some parents may choose to change their mind at the last minute. And then we would go down the list of how the lottery placed kids 1 through, I think we ran it today, Carmen, we have 62 available children right now, and that number can change, who will be turning 4 by December 1st of 2022. So same cutoff as kindergarten. So those parents would reach out to them. We have a couple of sets of twins, and we would make that lottery happen. And then what's the pre-K experience that we're looking to build in the district? You know, we absolutely, since it's full day, we would want our children to have specials. 40-minute special is a little much for a 4-year-old, so we probably run 20-minute specials, get them outside a lot. We have very talented staff that I think has been dreaming of this for a long time. And probably they already have schedules in their head of what that day would look like. So I think it would probably be a very fulfilling experience. But again, next slide, overview and next steps. Money is there. If we don't use it, they take it back. We took it back this year very quickly. And as Joe and Enrique have been consulting, the requirement for the district, in addition to the $183,000 that we're gifted, we would have to probably put in about $80,000 to get the program off the ground. And that includes staffing, new furniture and equipment for 2 pre-K rooms. And then there at last is the timeline. We're looking to see if we can have the Board of Education approved by March 18th. Lots of reasons for that, not the least of which is we're in the middle of staffing. And if I have to cut 2 more people, I need to know that as quickly as possible so people can resettle in other positions or potentially look for something outside the district if the need arises. And then clearly we have to get out publicly with the request for proposal to communities, preschools that may want to partner with us, and then of course reach out to our parents and invite them to commit to an application and then see where we go from there. So that's the process. Questions? Corey, go ahead. Allie, go ahead.
So last year, we lost the money because we didn't use it.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were told that we might never see this money again. So what's the anticipation? Is this going to be part of our foundation aid every year, or is it, could we start this program and put time, money, and energy into making curriculum, buying the little desks, maybe we have to renovate classrooms, and then we don't get the state aid help in the future, and we can't carry the program on our own?
Yeah, we believe what was negotiated last year in the budget, what is in this year, meaning our first state aid runs, is that pre-K will continue to be a line item in foundation aid. That was a priority of last year's Assembly and Senate, and ultimately approved by the then governor, and the initial state aid runs that came out in January still had it in there. Is there a guarantee? No. The only problem I would say that we're concerned with is that this funding formula is statewide. And in fact, I learned from a meeting with our Assemblywoman a couple Fridays ago, I think the funding formula is even a couple decades old. So not only is it is a statewide uniform rate. It's also very, very old, so it hasn't accounted for any sort of inflation, and it certainly doesn't account for cost of living adjustments. That us running a program for 34 children here costs much different than if you're in the Adirondacks, Buffalo, or Syracuse. So we're advocating that the funding formula change so that we could receive more, which would reduce the district contribution, or what we call the local share. But we are confident that it will remain in the Foundation Aid run. I think it's been very, very popular. One of the most popular questions that Margaret receives as she helps coordinate new families coming to the district is, do you have rehab? I mean, it becomes a marketing tool. But yes, your child could be, depending on the lottery, part of a full day program for 4-year-olds. And we need it. We really need it. Our demographics have changed. We talked about that a couple months ago, that we are a much different district today demographically than 11 or 12 years ago. And I'll have Lisa just share a couple pieces of data in terms of the children coming into our kindergarten program that are part of CPSE or already have special needs that a program like this could provide. So Lisa, just real quick, right? How many?
So next year we have about 42 as of today. So you also have to remember that's as of today, and we classified 2 kids this week, CPSE. So we are finding more and more kids are coming to us that have not had preschool experience and are just showing up at 4 years old. As we look at the trends though, in 2021 we had 36 students enter, 21-22 we had 41, and next year right now we're slated for 42. If we even go as far as projections for 23-24, we're looking at 26 kids, and those are all the ones we know. Those are not kids that we can even identify yet, because perhaps they're the first child, or they're children that are not in preschool yet. So we're finding this year alone, I think we found 6 kids that had absolutely no preschool experience from birth to turning 5, and they are entering the CPSE world. So, that's just a small picture of what's happening. And you're talking 42 and a class size of 125 so far next year. So that's a third of the students that are going to be entering. They could be not entering with a full IEP, they could be entering with only related services, but they are still coming in as a student with a disability.
And Margaret spoke with, got some data, a number of kindergartners we had that did or did not have pre-K
Yeah, we don't actually, we should think about this, but right now we don't collect that information when kids register. So it happens that casually the 3 secretaries take those notes as the kids are coming into them. So what I was able to gather real quickly is that about 50-55% of our kids attended pre-K, but that means that 45 did not. And usually, and many of you know this, for years, we've been running what we call kinder camp. And it happens for a couple of weeks late August, loading right into the start of school, for the kids who are, I guess, identified as at risk during the kindergarten screening that happens in the spring. And, I talked with the teachers that run that, and, it's nice, it's a nice program, it kind of gets kids ready to be in school, but we all wish that we could do more. So, we'll see.
I think Corey has been waiting, and then Jen, and then Doug.
So I just have a couple quick questions. So the first one, so I remember when we last reached out to providers in the community that nobody responded, right? That there were 2 responses?
Okay, so last year we had 2 local preschools who were initially interested. The bar is high in terms of what the state requires of private providers. And at the end of the day, they both had to back out for 2 different reasons.
Okay, so we had no one that could be provided. Is there any reason to think that that would change this time around?
One of the 2 providers was very keenly interested in partnering with us and is looking forward to an opportunity in the coming year. So I think they'd be excited about this. However, if we do go that route of starting the program, it lessens the number of students that receiver would take on. I don't know if it becomes financially sound for her to look for certified staff if it only means she has 3 or 4 students.
Right.
So we won't know that until we get into it, and we may be surprised, and there may be another provider on board this year that wasn't ready last year to jump in.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to my next question. So you mentioned something about 62 potential eligible students coming in. When I look at the numbers for K, though, it looks like we have around 126 that are in K right now. So are you anticipating a 50% reduction in enrollment, or how come my numbers aren't?
Kindergarten is always the riskiest grade to guesstimate. Again, I was a kindergarten teacher for a long time, and literally the first 3 weeks of school, kids would just be showing up in droves. We've never really understood what it is about kindergarten, and maybe if it's the first child in a family, sometimes parents are like, uh-oh, that's the date, I forgot. Usually if they're siblings, they're already in the swing of things, but it is very hard to guesstimate that one. But you can see it, the 125 is much lower than the number we have this year right now. So, I mean, some of that is demographics, yes. We're not the only district seeing a decrease in enrollment, and that's been going on for a little while, but that's what we have right now, and we don't know what, we check the numbers all the time. So Carmen ran it for me last week, and I had to run it again today.
And let me just jump in on that, Corey. So just as an example of the swing, last year Furnace Woods had 26 kindergartners, this year 57. So
I'm just looking grades year over year, right? Because these 5th graders are the ones kindergartners, and they're probably at the same class. And it looks to be, slightly declining, right? From 5th grade all the way down to kindergarten. Part of that could be benefit of teachers, but it does seem to be declining. But the 50% was a little bit alarming to me, right? Because that's a big drop. And then we're only going to support 34 kids here. So let's say it is 62, right? There are going to be 30 kids that don't get these services. And I know it's going to be by the lottery, but I kind of feel like it almost seems like a disservice.
That's how everybody does it. Of those 62 children, please understand that some families will not want to send their children. Some moms may be at home, or maybe grandma is available. Some may prefer another setting where maybe there are, neighborhood kids where moms can help each other carpool if they're working. So there are other reasons why, but literally, unless you know, Joe, I don't know of a local public pre-K program that takes all of the children that are available to them.
And I'll say something that will, maybe make you cringe, but what some districts do is they supplement the state funding by funding programs 100% on their own. So as you say, boy, it'd be great if we could serve all 60 kids. Let's assume they all want a spot. That's about 4 more classrooms. So we can give you a price tag to say, Hendrick Hudson is going to have pre-K for everybody. The state, we're going to use the state's 186 to get us started, but we're going to have pre-K for everyone. I'll go a step further and say, it was one of the conversations we had last year contemplating the Princeton plan was we could look at savings from the Princeton plan in a number of ways. Decrease fixed costs going forward, and we'd be able to prove that, current model versus Princeton plan, or and use those savings to create additional programs that we wouldn't be able to create within our existing infrastructure and budget. So I could say that if the Princeton plan, this round numbers, is going to save $1.2 million a year for argument's sake, and we want to use $400,000 to have our own pre-K program, okay, we're not saving everything we said, but now we've just built a program that we otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. So there's that opportunity, and Margaret's eyes lit up with the idea of having more than 2 pre-Ks. But there are school districts that do that. There are school districts that fund more of a program than just what the state formula provides. And that is an option.
And does the lottery method take financial need into account? Because there are going to be some parents that really could use it.
Right. That, unfortunately, I have begged the state to allow me to use the Title I funding. And I can match them, you know, I would be very clear about it. They will not let me commingle those two funding streams. And that's a shame.
Well, but the lottery itself, though, like, couldn't there be qualifications for the lottery, like to get into the lottery?
No, there can be.
It has to be.
Yeah, it's the same with her special ed children. Anyone who's interested goes into the pool.
So you also have to remember that some of my students go to a full-day special ed program, so they wouldn't even participate with Margaret, right? So I probably, let's say I have 5 to 7 of them. I also have families that are coming into kindergarten next year. I know right now 4 families are not sending their children. So of this 42, you know, we can take 4 away, but again, that's not a huge number. So we're talking about a large number of students coming in. But I do have quite a few kids that go into a full day program, and it's easier for parents. They'll send them to the Bronx. They'll take them with them to work. And then we find providers there. So sometimes it's a little bit easier for our families to go to where they work and take their child with them as CPSE kids.
Okay.
And they may be in the 62 kids.
Yeah.
Right. So it may end up even being more reduced. It's really hard to know, and it's not an ideal situation. We all wish we could just say we'll take whoever comes, but right now it would be a starting point, let's say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jen, I think you're out.
I was going to ask about Title I.
Okay.
Too bad.
Dead.
Oh wait, one question though. So would you eliminate kinder camp and if
Yes.
you had, okay.
Yes.
And use that money for some other Title I fund?
We can, and we obviously would, but I really, you know, I just feel that that's a disservice.
Yeah. Thank you.
So continuing on the same questioning with providing pre-K for all students, Lisa, you're saying that you're providing additional services in kindergarten. If we provided pre-K for all students, in addition to being a phenomenal educational benefit, are we potentially saving money in the kindergarten programs by we will probably have a less need for additional services because they'll be better prepared and more on track. So could we look at the potential savings of reduced services in kindergarten and maybe allocating that to a full-time pre-K?
Yeah,
for the benefit of the education, and it might not be as expensive as we're thinking. Just a thought.
It's interesting that you say that, because when Margaret and I were actually looking at pre-K, we talked to a superintendent that I know very well, and where my nieces and nephews went, and they have a full-day pre-K program, and I think there's 4 sections, and it's about the same size we are at Hud, and they have what they call power sources. So your power sources are your speech, your OT, and your PT, and they actually circulate more to every child. So the classification rate when kids are entering kindergarten is much lower. And they've actually found a little bit rise in their test scores. So they're doing a lot of early intervention with their peers, with the team that we have in place. So we know our team is strong, we have the best providers. The best providers are working with them all day long, they're in the school. That would cost more, I think, in the end, but it would save us probably on the back end. So you'd have to look at the number of related service people you have, the number, you would need a special ed teacher dedicated to the program because you want to do an integrated special ed. It typically would not be an ICT, it would be a pullout. I used to do that when I did my first rotation as a student teacher. I was in an integrated preschool. We were with the gen ed kids for half the day. We had lunch as a community, and then we went on and worked on IEP goals. So there's different ways you can structure it. Would it save us some money? It probably would in the long run. We do have about 20,000, I think, is what is in our preschool grant that we could utilize. It would save us a little bit of money when it comes to having to pay Westchester a little bit. So part of those services we have to pay for. in the end, we really have to sit and look at a cost analysis as well as what services and where do kids grow.
That's what the research says about UPK, is the earlier you can get them in. And there are some, maybe not districts, but certainly I believe New York City is a program for 3-year-olds.
Yes.
And the research is showing the quicker, earlier you can get children into a school building, the environment, the climate, the culture, a certified educator, that there will be savings on the back end. I mean, we can do a cost analysis, but it also depends on the needs of the child at 4 years old and whether we're able to meet them, remedy them, reduce them, so on and so forth. But that is why districts are making a commitment. And not to go back to what I said to Corey about moving to the Princeton plan to free up resources, right? We talked last year, moving to the Princeton plan would free up resources that could go to reduce future tax increases or to build different innovative unique programs. And that is one of the themes that came out of the SWOT analysis last year was what could be a carrot? What could we have differently in our district by adopting the Princeton plan, where we save a little bit money but take other savings and reinvest in other programs? If you had said, go build a pre-K program to make sure we could have pre-K for every child, we could come back relatively quickly and say it's going to be $600,000, and $600,000 new dollars is another 1.5% to increase taxes. If we say we're going to save, again, $1.2 million from the Princeton plan, and we're going to take half of that to build a pre-K program, there's an opportunity we otherwise wouldn't have had afforded to ourselves. And that's one of many that came out of our discussions last year. Another was a dedicated STEM teacher, foreign language at the elementary, so on and so forth. So it's not just, and I'll go back again to what Corey said, moving to the Princeton plan was not just solely a cost savings opportunity, it was also an opportunity to perhaps use some of those cost savings to do something different, and this could be one.
I think it would be interesting if we could do some kind of analysis. Yeah, I think the building a pre-K, the cost of that is probably very easily defined. Determining the savings of, because it's not just in kindergarten, it probably continues after that, the reduction in services going forward. But if we could take an estimate of that, I think it would be good information to know. I mean, if you're seeing clearly that, it's only going to be minuscule amounts, I mean, don't go too far with it. But I mean, if it's looking like it could be significant and make the net cost to us not so bad, I think it's worth considering looking at it.
I know how we're spending our vacation.
Vacation? There's a vacation?
I guess so.
So a lot of my questions are already answered, but there's 2 things left. And this isn't a question question that needs to be answered right now, but I would love to see an overall budget for UPK based on the 183 plus 80,000, because then we can determine, really if we want to put more money towards it or whatever. Just line items on how we got to that 80,000 would be awesome. Because it doesn't sound like much money, as we've discussed. And then the other thing I was going to ask, and I don't know if there's an answer to this either, but is there any idea what transportation looks like for UPK?
To my knowledge, those children in other districts that go to a school building that have UPK are eligible for transportation on the normal school bus.
Well, I'm gonna.
They're eligible, whether they're.
I would say they may be eligible. That might be the correct phrase, but I can tell you because I'm going through it right now with a grandchild that Lakeland does not bus.
Right.
So if you are part of it, you drop and you pick up.
I just know we're doing a lot of changes with transportation, so this would have to work in to all of that. So I was wondering about that.
On the other hand, I thought districts like Tampico will do it, or Tampico does. My 2 children were picked up and returned home in Britain.
And I know that Mechanical actually takes their teachers' children, even if they don't live in the district.
Not anymore.
Yeah, they do.
They charged.
They allow.
Same here, and we charged them.
So we can, first thing we'll do, Margaret has the breakdown of the 80,000 because we reviewed this a couple weeks ago. It's basically supplies, materials, equipment, because outfitting a pre-K classroom is much more tactile, hands-on, and it's not anything in terms of furniture, supplies, equipment we could repurpose. But in terms of a larger budget, going back to what Bill said, if we were to outfit separate from the grant, how much would it cost to fund district-provided pre-K soup to nuts per classroom? We can very easily have an estimate of that.
Just going to the transportation, it just dawned on me, is there additional requirements in busing a pre-kindergartner because a regular bus seat might not be appropriate for them? Is there additional
We might
costs?
be able to ask them, we'll address that as part of your presentation. Yeah, we'll have Liz address that.
No pressure.
Anybody else have questions about pre-K? It's generating a lot of great discussion.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for Superintendent's Report?
We'll have time, we'll move along.
All right, well, in lieu of time, it's 8:30 and we've been in this meeting now for 2.5 hours. Board trustees, does anybody need a brief recess before we start our presentations? All right, let's move on then.
Okay, Enrique is going to walk us through one of our three components of our budget that by law we need to present and document for the public, not only through these presentations, but ultimately through our official budget communications that will go out late April, early May. So this is our administrative budget. He'll walk us through what that proposal looks like before we go on to maintenance and then transportation.
Good evening, everyone. This is our initiative budget. I have two topics for today. This will have a budget update. And then I'll discuss the administrative budget. The budget update, we got additional $1.1 million under the legislative proposal. And that includes the $183,000 for pre-K. If we decide not to get pre-K, like Margaret said, we have to give it back. Our health insurance premiums, since the last time that we discussed them, are going up from an increase of 6% to an increase of 8%. And that's around $250,000 in our budget. We have 10 teachers that are retiring, 2 of them from the elementary school, and the rest from mainly the middle school. Due to the fact that there's an increase in the health premium from 6 to 8%, our BOSS's administrative budget also will increase $50,000. We asked the board to do a capital project for the PP cafeteria. I added for that capital project $150,000. I'm expecting that if the board agrees and the community agrees, we will have an additional $150,000 also for the capital project for the budget for the 23-24 school year. And then, like we discussed, we need to increase the budget by $80,000 for the pre-K offering. The idea is that the pre-K offering will have 2 teachers, 2 teaching assistants, and then whatever is needed for materials, supplies, and furniture. Next, please. So on January 20, when we had our first budget meeting, I spoke and I said that our preliminary budget was going to be between 85.1 and 86.6. Due to these factors that I just discussed, I moved it to 86.1 to 86.6. That represents an increase of between 2.1 and 2.7%. And our preliminary tax levy back in January 20 was between 50 and 50.8, an increase of between 3.5 and 4.9. Due to the increased state date, now our preliminary tax levy is between 50.1 and 50.4. And now I want to talk about the administrative budget. The administrative budget is the smallest part of our budget. By law, I need to show you the budget in 3 parts. Program that represent everything that goes directly to the students. That obviously is the biggest part. Our goal has always been to have this part of the budget at over 80%. Each year it's about 82.7. Then we have our capital budget that includes debt and everything that we need to have the operations of the district, and then our administrative budget that represents 6%. Our administrative budget is divided by 4 different parts. First, the general support. General support represents the expense of the Board of Education and the district clerk. This year, the expense of the Board of Education is going up substantially. And that's mainly due to the fact that we're moving some of the expenses that were coming either from my budget or Joe's budget to this budget because they are part of this budget. And that's mainly Greg and the support that we need to have all our board meetings televised and then put in YouTube. Then we have our district clerk that represents the salary, dues, expenses for our district clerk, and that's an increase of 3.2% or $610. So the general support increase is close to 30%, but only an increase of $7,700. Our next part is central administration. Central administration represents 30% of the administrative budget, and that represents the office of the superintendent, my business office, and that includes the treasurer, auditors, tax, and internal and external auditors. The part that is going up a little bit is internal and external auditors. We didn't have for several years an increases, so they asked us for a small increase of 4.3%. So the total central administration increase is 2.6% compared to last year for $41,000. Central services represent legal costs. Legal costs are going up also. Like everything else, our legal counsel is increasing their fees. Then we talk about personnel department. Personnel department is going up substantially because Laura's salary came from here rather than technology. So we see a substantial decrease here, but we're going to have to see the same increase in the technology budget. The cost of running our public relations is basically the same. I'm expecting our insurance program in general for the whole district to go up about 5.2%. We don't have the last numbers, but that's the expectation. And then our policies administrative fees are going down 0.5%. We discussed that before. So our total services are going down about 14.5% or $152,000, and obviously that's a salary that was moved out of this part. And finally, the most important and the biggest part of the administrative budget is curriculum development and supervision. By the way, the numbers in parentheses are the number of people that work in that department. So in this case, the Office of the Executive Director represents Margaret's salary and Jane's salary. That's an increase of 2.1%. Then we have curriculum and professional development. That's also a small increase. And then school district administration, that represents all our principals and their secretaries. That's why we have 24. The only administrators that are not here are the administration of special aid. And that's because that's going to be part of the special education program. So this part of the administrative budget is an increase of 1.1%. So I will make some final page is the total administrative budget. That in total is a decrease of $74,000 or 1.4%. That's it. Thank you to the high school and middle school art students. I receive more and more art to modify presentation, but it's difficult to pick the ones that I like the most, but they all are great. And now, any questions that you have?
Ellie, you have a question? I do. Under general support, the 102% that reflects Greg's help out here for board meetings, just remind me where that line item is going to be. We can look for the decrease because it's not here, right?
No, for example, a portion of the office of the superintendent of my office.
Okay, that's where it was.
Yes,
okay.
That's where it was in the past. Last year and in the last probably 10 years, the amount was $6,970 because originally what I used this moment more than anything was for training for the new board members, basically that. So we were discussing, let's set up, since this is the year where we're going to have so many movements from one account code to the other one because of Princeton Black, let's clean all the account codes and put the expense where it belongs.
Okay, thanks. I just couldn't remember where it was coming from. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not your salary.
I have one question on the capital project for the BB cafeteria. So when I toured that with Anthony, one of the issues was we didn't know what was under the cafeteria, right? It might be bedrock, it might be concrete, it might be nothing. We didn't know, and it sounded like 150 to me was a very low estimate of what it could potentially be.
You're right. It's not close to being 150. I think the architect sent us like 1.1 million.
That's what I was hearing.
No, but that's what, because most of the money is going to come from the cafeteria fund. The cafeteria fund has, if you remember, has about
it's a surplus
fund balance of about 700,000. So what I'm saying is, I'm going to use the 700,000. This 150 plus 150 of the next year.
Okay, got it.
And so it's very important for us to say that this is a capital project because if the community votes yes, and we always said this is a capital project, we get stated.
Correct. That's great. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, who's next?
Hendrick.
Good evening, everyone. Anthony Molina, I'm the Director of Facilities for the school district. I'm here to present the facilities operation and maintenance budget for the coming year. We usually try to start off the presentation talking about some of the cost drivers for the district and where we get to our fees and the things that really drive my budget. Usually it's utilities and a couple other things. So we'll talk a little bit about that first. This gives you an overall idea of electric we pay to the New York Power Authority. So we are a solar system where we have a rates on our buildings, and Con Edison. In Con Edison we pay both electric and gas, but it comes out of the electric line. Overall electric, where we anticipate it to increase, we think it's going to go about 13 to 15%, and that's based on information that we get from the New York Power Authority, the consortium that we purchase electrical power through. So far to date, we expended about $330,000 on electric costs, and again, that electric cost is comprised of the Power Authority, the solar, Con Edison, all under that number, which represents roughly about $47,000 a month. And if you do the balance of what we have based on our budget for last year, we have about $232,000 left, so that gives us about $46,000 a month from here going forward. So we're right on line with the numbers. We might be a little tight, but we're right there with everything. Projected utility budget for the coming year is $665,000. The breakdown for solar is about $120,000. Night is about $420,000, and Con Edison, based on what we know, is about $125,000, based on our past budgets and the information that we get where the budget's going. Some of the things we're looking to do in the coming future is we're looking to do an energy performance contract, which we've talked about at a couple of the meetings. And one of the big savings cost items would be going to LED lighting. Now, most of our buildings are fluorescent lighting on the insides. We're looking to go to LED. Roughly, with the LED lighting, our savings for the EPC would be about 40 to 50% off our electric bill going to LED. Solar, we're looking also at additional possibilities for solar. We have a new maintenance building, so there's a possibility we can put some panels up on that roof as well, and then maybe going to a land-based array somewhere in the district. Solar information about the solar. We have 5 buildings that are producing solar power. All the elementaries, the middle and the highs. It accounts for about 40% of the district's needs. We produced about 4.9 megawatt hours since inception in 2016. The 3 elementary schools operate primarily on solar during the year. They can almost sustain themselves 100% on solar, depending on weather conditions, sunlight, all that rest of the good stuff. Right? Furnace Woods has the largest array of the 3. The one nice thing about the solar is, the biggest value for me is it stabilizes our bill. It keeps things consistent. We know what that price is going to be. We already have a power purchase agreement, so we know what that cost is. As opposed to when we purchase our electrical or through Night or Con Edison, we're at the whim. If gas prices or prices for production and delivery go up, then our cost goes up with those providers as well. And then we have some nice offsets as well. Every time we, use our solar, we're saving, carbon dioxide, we're saving gallons of fuel, and we're also being able to power other things in the community instead of using it for here for the district. Some other drivers, like I said, it comes to utility costs, fuel oil, we purchased that off a state contract. The cost per gallon has increased from last year. Last year was about $1.72 a gallon. Now it's up around $2.86. We expect that to rise a little bit more before the season's out, so about $1 or so a gallon. Fuel saving measures, we're always looking to do something. In the barn, we did some more weatherization in the building. We're changing exterior doors to a more weatherized, bulkier door that keeps the weather out, helps us save fuel. We watch the forecast and plan accordingly. And what that means is my guys watch, and I watch the weather. If we go into a heat, warm day, maybe we'll roll back the boilers and we'll run them as long. We'll do different things to curtail the usage to save on our fuel costs. And we also have the proposed energy performance contract coming up, and as we get more details with that and we get more involved in the energy performance, we'll talk a little bit more of that in the future. Propane, we use that on state contract. Increase in cost from last year at this time. And propane account, we use that to run the pilots for the boilers, and we also use that for cooking in some of the buildings. The high school is primarily on gas. We can run gas in the building, so we have gas for the boilers and we have gas for the cooking, and the same thing with French units. Natural gas, Con Ed, talked a little bit about that. Jumped the gun, but gas usage and cost increased a little bit from last year. We expect to go up a little bit more, and it's going to plateau a little bit, recess back. And that's what we see from, we get most of my data from Energy Information Administration, EIA, which is online. And I download data from there and I look at trends in different ways of those utilities jumping through the cost cycles. Next slide. Now we get into the numbers. Instructional salaries, we anticipate that to go up about $73,000, which represents a 2.5% increase. Equipment, utility, we're going to keep that the same, be zero. Contractual services, we're going to take a little bit of jump in that. We're jumping at about $35,000 to 28%. We have a couple of things that come around every so often, and one of those things, we have an ABI, we have an AHERA, we have some other contract services that we have to do, some inspections of our elevators every so often, so those things jump up our costs. We anticipate that to roll back though after this year, and then we'll reevaluate that when we get to it. Contract services also has to do with our boilers, has to do with our gyms, inspections and different kinds of things that we do inside of our buildings. We've also seen an increase in our supplies, contract services, professional services. It's just where we're going right now with a lot of different things, and trying to get supplies to my buildings and trying to get materials in my buildings. I'm seeing an increase in cost, so I think that's rolled into there as well with some of these contractors when they give me pricing. Insurance, that's going to go up a little bit, about 5%. I think we touched on that. Maintenance contracts, maintenance guys come in and they do maintenance inside our buildings. We're adding a little bit more money in there. It's about a 5.9% increase. Professional services, we're taking a little dip in that. We had some professional services, architect, engineer services that we needed to do over the last year, and we're rolling that back a little bit, about minus 4%. Materials and supplies, we're jumping that up a little bit. Again, material costs, supply costs has gone up a little bit, so we wanted to just put a little more money into that as well. Oil, we moved that a little bit. We tend to think that that's going to go up a little bit. It represents about a 3.2% increase. Electric and gas, we touched on that when we talked about the drivers. We're going to put an 18%. For electric, gas, and water, there's a slight increase in those because we added a new building. So we have a new maintenance building, so we have water with that, we have electric with that, and we have gas with that. And water for that building also ties into sewage. So all the water that's coming out has to go back. So I have to pay when it comes in, and I have to go on the back end when it goes back out again. And one of the things that we did with the administration building, when we built the maintenance building, we tied the septic system that was at the administration building into the maintenance building, and we're pumping that back out, and it's going into the sewer mains, and it's being taken away from here. So there's a cost for that. So that's why some of those numbers are going up as well. And so like you see, like the municipal water went up a little bit, so I now have the sewer charges for those two buildings. Telephone will go up a little bit, it represents a 1.7% increase. Gas, like I said, propane and things like that going up, it's 5.3. Maintenance projects, we put a little bit more money into that. Those are things that we do around the buildings to try to keep things into shape, about 5% increase. Security of plant contractual, That has to do with some of our coasters and for BOCES that we pay for some consultants to be inside the buildings to do work with us. And that staying the same, so it's zero. And the total increase is about a $254,000 increase from year to year, which represents 5.2%.
Questions? Corey?
I've only got two. So this all looks great. The first question is on solar. Do we have a program to maximize solar generation by removing snow and cleaning the panels on a regular basis?
No, actually, Corey, we don't own, we cannot do it because we don't own the solars. This is a purchase power agreement. The owners, they changed many hands, so I don't know who's the owner now, but we cannot. The one thing that happens is because of the heat, usually there's no snow on it, but we cannot.
But they're flat.
I know.
You're going to get a lot of wind across the building, so it doesn't blow it off the panels, and then for the heat,
we cannot.
but we're not allowed to
We cannot touch them. Okay. That's part of our agreement. So actually, if something breaks, we have to call the company and say, you come and fix it. And it doesn't cost me anything. It costs me the fact that now I have to hook up to night, but that it's more expensive. So I have an incentive, but it's not like they are charging me. But that's the way the agreement was. They are the owners, and they are the ones that have to come and fix it.
Yeah, okay. Corey, they're monitoring on their back end as well. So it behooves them to get it operational, functioning as well. So they'll call me if they have a inverter out or if they have a panel out. They call me right away and say, look, we got to come out there. We're going to do a service call because we're not getting the right production out of the panel. So they also said when we put them in that if there's too much snow or they get dirty or something like that, they're going to come out and they're going to either clean the panels, replace the panels, or do what they ever do because they want that money as well. If they're not producing solar, then we're not paying them. So it only behooves them to get out here and take care of things. But we're not allowed to touch it.
Have we had any solar failures?
Yeah. We've had a couple yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
no inverters, just the panels.
Just the panels. Okay. So the inverters should last. Are the inverters inside or are they micro inverters up on? Okay, so the micro inverters. So last question is, have we thought about electric school buses for the district?
So
Next topic. Okay, yes. All right.
Thank you.
Transportation presentation.
All right, so I pre-asked my question.
Thanks,
Maybe something that might go along with it though is when we do get to electric school buses, you're going to need to have power for them, right? And so I don't know, just thinking down the road, how it would happen, making that happen would probably fall underneath the operations.
Yeah, it's going to be a joint effort between the two of us, and there's going to be a lot of thought process that goes through that. There's a lot when Liz will talk a little bit about it maybe as well, but when the companies come in, they start selling these products to you, they're going to want to set up, charging stations and all as part of a whole package when it comes to you. The other aspect of it is, are we going to put charging stations at the building for our buses to use at events, or are there going to be, charging stations for us to use at other school districts for us to use when we go to their events? So yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure that would have to, be built with that. There are also, if we at the bus garage also thought about putting solar panels down there, if there's a way to. There's battery backup storage that we can have, and we can have the solar panels now charge those batteries, and those batteries are then used to charge the buses. So there's a lot of different things that would have to be considered to at some point.
And if I can, not to get stuck on electric buses, but there's a great advocacy effort to our state lawmakers to not just incentivize electric buses, although there are pros and cons, and we will talk about that, but to start to incentivize buildings and operations areas where we can reduce our footprint, where there could or should be incentives to go green, solar, improve our HVAC boilers with more energy efficient equipment, and have that be incentivized by the state rather than buses, because we're finding there are more limitations on electric buses than there are if Anthony had some grant money, to improve efficiency with some of his operations. So there's starting to be a move away from buses and more toward operations that you can yield savings quicker, and there are more savings to be had on the physical plant, perhaps in transportation.
Anthony, I know there's a lot in the news right now about increasing energy costs. Are you pretty confident that you've budgeted enough if our energy costs go sky high?
I think so. Yeah, we've been looking at there and work with Enrique. We go back and forth. And I also talk to my constituents and other other school districts throughout Westchester to see where they're going, what they're thinking. There is no one can predict, 100% what's going to transpire. But yeah, we try to put a little bit of extra in there to make sure that we can cover what we have.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Anthony. That will bring us to transportation.
Good evening, everybody, members of the board, Mr. Operator, and the general public. Thank you for coming. So this is my proposed budget for the 22-23 school year. I continue to improve route efficiency to better serve the community and to adapt to the new grade banding model. This has been an ongoing initiative since the grade banding plan was first approved, and this will continue to be fine-tuned to meet the needs of the community. I continue to work with athletics to reduce overtime for sports, and we also work on reducing spending without losing our quality of service. We continue to utilize a shared services model to combine transportation services with other school districts in order to reduce our expenses. Some enhancements in student safety on the bus for the 22-23 school year. All drivers were recertified in EpiPen administration. Our drivers also received training in diabetic emergencies and protocols for students with seizure disorders. We continue to utilize a web-based training program for all transportation and buildings and grounds personnel. That's through the GCN network that all district staff use, and we use that also as well for the drivers and the custodians. This year, we received delivery on a 72-passenger Type D bus. We also received delivery on a dual-wheeled 6-passenger van outfitted with a wheelchair lift. We replaced 13 adaptive seating devices used for our special needs students that we transport. We were able to secure a vendor for the installation of new lift at the bus garage. Those materials have been ordered, however, due to current issues with acquiring materials, we're still waiting for the installation of that lift. We did receive dates as to when materials are going to start to ship to us, and we just are looking probably at installation over the summer.
Hey, just remind the board about what those lifts are.
Right. So the lifts that we are looking to replace at the garage are the lifts that we use, obviously, to put the buses on, to do the repairs and do the inspections and everything. And that was in the ban that we put forward last school year that the public approved. As we go through my budget, line by line, our non-instructional salaries, it's a 2.1% increase, which reflects the contractual obligations that we have to the CSEA unit. Our non-instructional chauffeurs, that's a 4.3 increase. I'm just looking at perhaps a couple of, to put another substitute chauffeur on the payroll so that I have that person to help fill, where needed. And it's not that person is used hourly. They're not used on a regular basis. They may work, 2 hours one day and not work for a few days. It really depends on what the needs are for that particular day. Okay, for my chauffeurs in the handicap division, it's also a 2% increase. Non-instructional overtime is a 2% increase. And that's for, field trips and different things of that nature. Field trips, we increased that by 1.2%. We do have classes that are going on field trips right now. We've restricted them to outdoor venues. There's, a few requests for the springtime. I'm anticipating, first of all, everybody wants to go to the Bronx Zoo in the spring, so I'm sure that would be there. So yes, our students are going on field trips, not as many as they were before. We did have a group from the high school that went to Brewster Ice Arena, but opted for the outdoor venue as opposed to doing the indoor venue. So that was, they had a great time. Okay, and also sports overtime, we've increased that also by 2%, which is also the contractual requirement for CSA. We're negotiating with CSA. We'll start negotiations with CSA. Their contract is up June 30th, so I'm anticipating that it will be a 2% increase. For my equipment line, I didn't increase it at all. Contractual expenditures is 3.3% increase. Those are things like, my radio repair. The company I have my radios through is my routing program, different things of that nature is what comes out of that line. Materials and supplies, that's an increase of 18.8%. That's because it's costing me right now 37% more for parts to repair the buses. And so that's why that increase is there. Gas and diesel as well. We've seen a 40% increase in the cost of fuel. Last year we were paying $1.60 a gallon for diesel. This year, I just did fuel billing the other day. We're spending $2.62 a gallon for diesel fuel right now. Gasoline's the same. It's $2.52 a gallon last year. Because it's clearly because of the pandemic and everything that was available last year. We were paying like $1.48 a gallon. For lubrication and oil, same thing, a slight increase there. Tires and chains, also an increase of 20.4%. My auto liability and my umbrella liability, those are 5% increases, and that's kind of like an industry standard, I guess, for our next year. My bus garage equipment stays the same. There's no increase there. The bus garage itself, the contractual expenditures, there's no increase there either. And those would be like, we get different things delivered for the mechanics that they use that are, I guess they're considered soft goods, like the rags and different things like that the company comes and takes them, brings us new rags, things like that. Water is the same. Electricity, we increased 7.8%, of course, because of the current climate we're in. Again, liability, property and general liability insurance at the bus garage, that's a 5% increase. And then I did not increase materials and supplies at the bus garage. We left that at $2,000. And I use that to just for office goods and things like that. I have a head driver that's there at the bus garage, so she, of course, has, paper and different things of that nature comes out of there. So my overall increase in my budget is 3.3%. And as we go on to our proposition for next year, our hope is to purchase 2 72-passenger Type D buses and equipment. These buses will replace 2 2006 Bluebird 72-passenger buses with current mileage of 111,000 and 113,000 respectively. The cost to replace these 2 vehicles will be about $315,000. We'd also like to purchase 2 18-passenger single-wheel vans, one that will be outfitted with a wheelchair lift, We have children that go to school over on the other side of the bridge, and for me to be able to put them on the Palisades to get there, it saves about 20 minutes one way for those kids to get to school. So rather than being on the bus for an hour and 40 minutes, they're on the bus, on the bus a little bit shorter time, because with a single wheel I can go on the Palisades, and with a dual wheel I cannot. And one of those children does use a wheelchair. Okay, those vehicles that I'm going to use to replace are in excess of 140,000 miles and are currently used each day. Okay, the cost to replace those two vans would be approximately $115,200. We also need to purchase a vehicle to be used by Buildings and Grounds Department for various tasks, including supply delivery, mail delivery, and snow removal. And the approximate cost of that would be $50,000. The total proposition would not exceed $500,000.
Any questions? Jen?
The buses that we replace, do we sell the old ones? Is there a resale value for?
So we do have some that we do, I'm sorry. We do have some, yes, we do sell them. Usually what we do is we'll take them out of daily service and use them as our spares. But we do have a company, AAR, that we will, they get auctioned off. And so that we've done that also.
You should have asked about electric buses now.
Sure. Hendrick and I have been talking about this for a couple of years. And we talked with our bus salesman, and we went to Croton and saw that Lion Electric came down with their bus, and they showed, their bus, and we went for a ride, and Anthony was there also. The technology for electric buses just isn't there yet, and I know what the governor's request is, what her directive has been. I'm the vice president of the State Association of New York Association of People Transportation. So I'm the vice president of that association, and we are working very hard along with our advocate to get the governor to change her drop dead date of 2035. Number one, the infrastructure in the state, the grid isn't going to be able to handle every school district in the state going to electric by 2035. For ourselves here in Hendrick Hudson, we would have to invest a lot of money in the infrastructure at the bus garage in order to be able to support charging stations for buses. And the cost of a bus right now, an electric bus, is $335,000. We right now don't have anything that qualifies us for any grant money for that.
But don't you also get savings from a repair standpoint? There's no oil changes, there's no transmission fluid, there's no transmissions to worry about, right? Isn't there a benefit on that side too?
Sure, or you and I know that better than anyone. So, again, we're talking about $220,000 difference.
Well, over the life of the bus, right?
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, that's easily doable.
We run the numbers, and here is the problem. Number one, we cannot just buy one. We need to buy 5 or 6. The cost of the infrastructure. Then you have, all those buses cannot go far. The most they can go in perfect conditions is 80 miles. And you know that 80 miles in bad conditions can be 60. So we cannot, so we're limited by mileage. We need to have our mechanics, and it's not a big deal, but it's important to be trained in electric. The insurance goes up because you know the danger of dealing with electric rather than a conventional as a mechanic, not as a driver, as a mechanic. We run the numbers, and no one more than me wants that. We're not there yet. I cannot see coming to the board and to the community and asking, instead of 120,000, 300,000. There has to be incentives that are coming. And I want to wait for those incentives rather than pay the difference. What I'm trying to do with this is extend the life of those buses so when we get the grant, we can buy more. But at this point today, this year, our recommendation is too expensive. Let's wait 1 or 2 years.
I didn't realize the range was so low on buses. Is that across the board? They're only about 80 miles of range?
Yes. Yes, and you have to, it's preferred that you charge them on off-peak hours.
Yeah.
So it would only be overnight charges that we would have to do, which is okay, but then I have to manage, or whoever's in my seat is gonna have to manage what those buses are used for. They're not gonna be going on sports trips. They're not gonna be leaving the district. They're gonna have to stay, here to drive our kids from the high school to home, the middle school to home. They're not gonna be buses that we're gonna be, using, to go to whatever. The ski trip alone is, 76 miles.
Does it, as long as we're thinking about it, we're also accounting for the other benefits of costs that we don't have to spend if we did that. It would be great to do that, but I agree, 80 miles range, it's not practical.
Yeah, and when White Plains got their buses 2 years ago, we're going to take the electric buses, take the kids on a trip, and they went on a field trip, and the drivers were running the buses in order to stay warm, and the kids came out and the buses wouldn't start. So they had to call and have, regular diesel buses come and pick those kids up to get them back to school, and then they had a tow truck to come and take those electric buses back.
That sounds like driver error.
But the driver, they didn't realize that, that they were running the, electric heaters in the bus and it's running off the power that they have.
Yeah, sorry, education error.
Absolutely. But I have other constituents, Suffolk Transportation, they just purchased, 6 buses last year. They're purchasing 6 buses this year. They're transporting 40,000 kids, but, they're also telling me that, and the island's pretty flat down there, and they have their own issues too. He's getting, on a winter day, he's only getting, about 60 miles on those buses.
Yeah, now you have to learn how to use these properly, right? That's really
So that's a learning process for everybody, not just the management of it, but also the people who are driving it, and also the mechanics themselves will be trained also on, the maintenance of them. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Alluded to earlier, the additional seating equipment for pre-K students. Not just, I believe we do need it, but will we get additional transportation aid because of that, or no?
Right now, UPK doesn't, you're not provided transportation aids for UPK.
So it would be no transportation aid for the pre-K.
Not that we know so far.
Not so far, it is something actually that's being advocated for, but it hasn't been approved yet.
And if we need the additional seating, do you know what that is off the top of your cost? The cost per...
The cost, I don't know. Any child that is not 4 years of age by December 1st must be in a car seat.
Bill, my personal experience for my kids that went to pre-K, and that was 20 years ago, is that they went with the rest of the...
On a regular bus.
But that was 20 years ago.
Okay. So it might not be an issue.
Well, it's very different 20 years ago than it is now. There are regulations now.
I qualify for
So September, October, November, till December 1st, they must be in a car seat. And I, in good conscience, I don't think we can put them on a regular bus without having a monitor on the bus. Because if there's an emergency, how are you going to get that child off? How are you going to get all those kids in car seats off of the bus?
Okay, something else to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. All right, so that concludes our presentations. That will bring us to our first audience comment section. Because we feel community engagement is important, the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment during this portion of the meeting. Please note that the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. The board is here to listen. To maintain an orderly meeting, the board has allotted 15 minutes for each public comments period, which may be extended by board consensus. Guidelines for those wishing to address the board are as follows. Each speaker should have signed in with Carmen prior to the public comment section and will be called in the order in which they have signed up. We would ask that groups designate one individual to speak on their behalf. It is not permitted to cede your time to another speaker. When called, please step up to the podium and begin by stating your name and affiliation if applicable. Letters, petitions, or other written materials should be handed to the district clerk prior to your comments. All comments must be directed to the board, and each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments, must be recognized by the board president. The board vice president will be timing the comments and will give a 30-second warning to the speaker with a yellow card and indicate when the speaker's time is finished with a red card. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to participants wishing to speak on varied topics, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Although we take personnel concerns and individual student matters very seriously, the board is not permitted to address these in open session, as per state and federal privacy laws. We would ask that you use appropriate administrative channels for these items. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner, so that our meeting can serve as a model of appropriate civil discourse for our students. In the event the meeting becomes unruly, the board may recess the meeting until order can be restored. Please remember, if you prefer not to participate in the public comments portion of the meeting, written comments to the Board of Education may be submitted in lieu of speaking. Please see the agenda or the district website for contact information. Carmen is our first speaker this evening.
Our first speaker tonight is Dana Goyer.
Thank you.
Did it change though? Because there was two public sessions. There was comment on agenda items and comment on non-agenda items.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Goyer. I'm not here as the co-president of the Furnace Woods PTA, and I just wanted to state that, so there is no affiliation with my comments to the members of the Furnace Woods PTA. I do want to first bring up the section, I believe it was 4.3, the fiscal, that was recently approved and passed here this evening. Is that correct? Was it approved or was it?
That is correct. It was approved.
It was approved. Okay. So I know that you've heard from many individuals in the district today regarding that, and I just want to throw out there that I do wish this board would have taken into consideration the upcoming elections that are happening, and for those future participants who could have been a participant or had a vote or say in that approval process. And while Mr. Hochreiter is certainly able to.
Excuse me, you can't talk about specific personnel during the.
Sorry. I'm voicing that my concern is that we didn't listen to the public here today or the comments that came in through various avenues, and we wish that you would have. My other topic I want to talk about is the Princeton plan, and with respect to the PTA survey that was issued. So I was a heavy participant in that, doing a lot of legwork, carrying along that information to bring to the district and on the district's behalf. And Mr. Hochreiter did a very nice job on January 19th summarizing the survey. I do want to put out my opinion there that at that point in time, his comment was that it is a very low response from families, but I feel differently. I believe that we're probably around a 20% rate when you take into account families that were asked to participate, one survey per household, not considering if there's 2 members of the household there, and we also asked families to take into consideration if they had multiple children. So not to fill it out 3 times if they have 3 children, but to fill it out once. And so when you look through the assumptions that I've made, fifth grade families probably opted out. Fourth grade families, particularly in Furnace Woods, may have opted out if they did not have younger siblings. And then also looking at the multi-children family units, that we are probably around 527 families from population estimate, and therefore the 106 surveys received was about a 20% response rate. And that's a very strong response rate with respect to surveys. So I wanted to put that out there. I'm also glad to see that the district has begun answering those questions, but the PTA has not been a part of providing those, or working with the district to create those answers. That's purely from the district and not with any PTA support. I wanted to make that clear. But I will do my best to help communicate the information that's shared regarding the Princeton plan going forward with the community that I serve. And the one thing I'd like to see happen is a budget with regards to the Princeton plan implementation, the additional costs that we're taking into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Karen, who's next?
Our next speaker is Kristen Irwin.
Hello, my name is Kristen Irwin. I'm a community member and parent. On February 4th, I attended the most recent meeting hosted by the team hired by our districts to allow community members to participate in the strategic planning of grade banding implementation. In the meeting, we were shown glossy packages touting moral values and ideals of other school districts. And the team leader, Ronnie, very pleasant fellow, said, "We are still in the brainstorming phase. By the end of this school year, Hendrick Hudson will have a plan in a format like this. Meaning by the end of this school year, we will have a completed proposal of what we hope this school district embodies." He said this in February of a project that's being forced to completion by September of this year. The strategic planning we are paying for is too late to be of true value. We do not have a plan, and this administration and board expects it to efficiently relocate 3 elementary schools this summer. But we did receive a cute little information timeline in our emails today. Now we've all heard the cliche, you want good, fast, and cheap, but you can only have 2 at one time. The district has decided for us that this change is going to be done fast. But we know for certain that this change will be done well because you have a community of amazing teachers and parents who refuse to fail. So that leaves us with a very expensive transition to the Princeton plan. Is it prudent to force implementation of grade banding during an inflated economy, as referenced by Liz and Anthony, during a global endemic, during the demolition of a nuclear power plant next to an industrial gas pipeline next to our elementary school? What if these rushed changes are actually squandering the 10 years of operation costs already set aside for the district? You have a moral obligation to put children's health and safety ahead of administrative ease. The extension of Mr. Hochreiter's contract is immoral and
You're talking about specific personnel.
Okay. The extension of a contract. Okay. Extension of the superintendent's contract until everyone has been presented with PhD level research positively backing the transition to grade banding is an imprudent decision. Thank you so much. Carmen, who is the next speaker?
John DeBenedictis.
Good evening, John Benedictus. First of all, on the transportation budget, are we still buying our buses? Anybody know? Do we still buy them?
Yes. This is
is not a discussion, John.
I'm sorry?
This is not a discussion, you make comments. If you have questions about the transportation budget, you can contact Liz Gilliam.
All right, well, again, we shouldn't be, at this point in time, all major transportation systems usually lease whatever the equipment is. I mean, having tremendous amount of aviation experience, there's no company that I know that would buy the equipment. In other words, every one of them is leased, okay? And I don't understand why the district doesn't lease their buses. But that's cool, okay? I want to talk about the fine arts program, okay? These kids that were up here tonight, I don't think you have any real idea, unless one of your children happens to be one of them, how great these kids are. I mean, they're not just good, they are great. This is not playing in some Division III participation trophy league, okay? These kids have come up through the ranks from middle school. They go to the New York State thing every year. They have to be awarded a certain number of points. Then they actually audition again. Then they have to make almost like an audition tape. It is sent then to a committee, okay? And when they say national, it is national, okay? This particular time when they were in Boston, it happened to be the northeastern section. Any state within New York, you know, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, on and on and on. And they glean out, in this particular case, I guess it was about 94 kids to participate in this group. Now, you know, these are the all-stars. I mean, these are no, you know, has-been. I mean, they don't get to do this because they feel like doing it. And when they go to the national, and we had children who would have went to the national, except COVID got in the way, okay? And my thing is, had we called this group of children the dodgeball after-school extracurricular sports team that happens to sing, the district would have went all out to support these children. These children had to go to Boston, spend 3 nights in a downtown Boston hotel, plus food, beverages. And quite frankly, the district did absolutely nothing for them. Not a thing.
Thank you, John. Your time's up.
I'm sorry?
Your time is up.
My time is up, yeah. Oh. Anyway, it's time to start to rethink the fine arts program. Because these kids
John, I'm sorry, your time is up.
need help. And, you know, I'm going to just take
Thank you for your comments about our wonderful art and music department.
Our next speaker is Stephanie Hickey.
Make sure my timer's on. 3 minutes. I want the people to see at home that I've sat for 2.5 hours and I have 3 minutes to talk. Timer's on. I'm so disappointed in the Board of Ed tonight. I'm going to read a statement on behalf of community members. Hendrick Hudson Board of Education, you all received this before tonight's meeting. Attached is the community grassroots-led petition requesting to delay the extension of the superintendent's contract and not reconsider it until winter of 2024. There is such a divide between the community and the administration, including the Board of Ed, and it only continues to get wider due to the Board of Ed ignoring the community. During the grassroots effort, as you'll see in the additional comments section that was sent to you, the community would like to see the proper implementation of the Princeton Plan with a clear metric to measure its success. Between declining state ranking, declining test scores, and a lack of accountability, many community members would like to see this delayed. Attached, you received over 250 people commenting on how they wanted you to delay this contract. And I don't know if everyone at home saw it. Only 2 Board of Ed members during that vote voted against it. You have 250 people asking you to delay it. You didn't even give the audience a comment on it. You're our voice. I come here every Board of Ed meeting asking you to open your ears and listen. And you don't. Open your eyes and see. Now I have 1 minute and 14 seconds. And I feel like, Mr. Hopwriter, you're a very smart person. Sorry. He's very smart. I don't understand why you continue to ignore the community. I don't get it. And people at home, coming here is doing nothing. You need to do something. You need to stop watching the meeting and run for Board of Ed. Vote for a change. 2 of the Board of Ed members are the only people who said that they didn't vote for the contract. Everybody else voted for it. So this election, people at home, make a change. Make it so the board has representation of you, of me, of everybody here. Not that and I'm sorry, the irony of your statement, Carol, that you encourage the community's comment. You encourage that by sitting me here for 2.5 hours.
You're getting very personal. Please address the board as a whole.
Now my time's up. So that's my encouragement. I encourage the people at home to go out and vote for a change. Thank you. You already got it. You got it.
Carmen, do we have anybody else?
Our next speaker is Mary Hillman.
Hi, Mary Hillman. I'm a parent of 2 children in elementary school. Support after home. While it is prudent for the board to seek stability and leadership during these uncertain times, the lack of transparency here is deeply concerning. What's just happened here tonight is that this board has removed another level of accountability from this administration. The issue with the contract resolution is not about extending the length of time. Rather, it's that the board agreed to remove language which allowed a percentage increase of the salary to be determined by the board as a result of a qualitative performance evaluation. Instead, the board has deemed it appropriate to guarantee increases of 2% per year for the entire length of the contract. While there will still be evaluation by the board, this is no longer tied to the salary, and we leave no ability for the board to decide that possible budget constraints might mean that there is no increase that year, or that Princeton plan maybe was implemented so flawlessly that there should be an increase of much, much more than 2% that year. I've been a parent here for 3 years, and my husband and I and many of the elementary parents that we've made friends with have consistently experienced extremely poor communication and equally poor planning by this district. There's a growing sense of despair among elementary school parents that this board is not prepared to hold this administration accountable for the educational growth of all the children in this district. The changes in the contract tonight only add fuel to the fire. As members of this board, you have a duty to ensure that you are looking out for the community that you claim to serve. And based on resolutions that you've passed in the last 5 months, it appears that the administration are looking out for themselves with your blessing. When will this board truly put children first?
Carmen, do we have any more speakers for agenda items?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to our committee reports. Anybody have committee reports? All right, so that will bring us to our board comments and new business section.
do have something for that. Attached to the agenda, and I have an example tonight, are 2 resolutions that are happening right now. 2 resolutions the Westchester Hudson School Board Association has given to us to consider discussing tonight and to consider putting our name to and signing. One is about the finances with the budget, with the state budget, and it's titled Ensure Long-Term Success in Public Schools. It touches on the foundation aid formula, it touches on mental health. Should I begin reading it? I can't remember how that works.
Or that's usually a policy, but you can bring it in.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I think it might make more sense actually to just, I can summarize and then have the result part we can talk about specifically. So the other parts of it is making a 2% cap, really a 2% cap. There's been situations in our district where we've had a negative tax cap in years past. So trying to make it to really 2% means 2%. The other thing was with the consistent funding on a long-term basis for the districts, and we're looking at the foundation aid formula. The other idea was to increase funding for district-provided pre-K programs, which we've been discussing tonight. So they would like, the Westchester School Board Association is uniting behind this idea of advocating for additional funding for the pre-K programs. And the other part is the zero-emission school buses, more funding to make that happen if that's going to indeed happen, and talking about the electric charging facilities and those expenses as well for the buses, and workforce retraining too. Then the last part of it has to do with the open meetings law, which we've talked a lot about in our district, and specifically trying to make it so that board members and trustees can participate in meetings virtually without disclosing their location and making a public announcement about that. So the bottom line is this: therefore be it resolved that the Hendrick Hudson School District calls on the legislature and governor of the state of New York to support public education through the provision of updates to the foundation aid formula and data, common sense amendments to the property tax levy cap, ongoing support for the mental health of all students, additional inflation-adjusted funding for pre-kindergarten programs, New York State assistance with transition to zero-emission school buses, and increased flexibility in the open meetings law.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this resolution? So if we can vote whether we're in favor of the resolution or not, and if we are, then if that gets sent to our governmental officials.
I was just wondering if this was accepted, how long would it take for some of this stuff to actually go on the law?
A lot of time.
Like years?
Well, it's an advocacy effort, yeah.
And what the important thing to remember is right now is when the state budget is being set. You know, the governor came out with her proposed budget. The legislature and the Senate are discussing it and trying to fine tune it. So by our coming out in support of these specific issues, it's showing our legislators and our representatives that these are things that are important to us as well.
Now, are these, I know that the open meetings law was backed by NISBA,
yes,
right? So
yes.
Do we make mention of the fact that we're duplicating some of the advocacy efforts of other groups so that we show additional support for some of these things? Or is it just, this is what Hendrick Hudson says?
I think it's okay not to, because NISBA is already advocating for all of us as one, and so we're saying here this is not only important because we're a member of NISBA, but also because it's important to our district.
Okay, but we don't mention that other people are advocating for these too? It just seems like there's strength in numbers, right? When we got a letter?
I don't know. I think it also is just that this is what's important to us as a district.
Right. NISBA is sending their own advocacy people, so they know that NISBA is advocating for this. Are you saying we should
maybe reference the fact that they're also that there are other groups that are advocating for the open meetings law? Maybe there are other groups advocating for the assistance with zero emissions. Are we the only ones asking for the tax levy cap to be recalculated?
Nope, we're not.
Right, so it might be good to reference, just to mention that we're not the only ones. Again, it's the strength in numbers.
Sure, we can consider that.
Who is this addressed to?
It's going to be going to our, got a whole list of people that are on this list. Sandy Galiff, Pete Harcum, Kathy Huckle,
Okay, good, so it's going
Carl
directly to
Heskey,
legislature.
it's going to Andrew Stewart Cousins, Michael Benedetto, Shelley Meir, Dr. Mary Bassett, who's the Commissioner of New York State Department of Health, Lady Rosa, New York State Ed, Lester Young, our Chancellor, Board of Regents, Karen Willis, who's the Regent for our area, and then also Karen Melange, who's the Executive Director of West Point.
I don't know that we need to say there's other people doing it. I mean, they're gonna get contacted by the other people. For us to say it, I don't know that it adds any value per se.
It's your call. If I was writing a letter, I would want to have the strength of numbers and say, hey, we're not the only ones here. You know, this is how we feel, and by the way, we're not the only ones who want this to happen. So that way, there aren't multiple people working on multiple letters addressing them. You know, there might be one person working on a particular
That's why I
issue.
asked who it's going to. Like, if this was going to a larger organization that has the support of all the districts,
Right, but it is going to Westchester Public School Board Association.
and are they forwarding it on?
We're forwarding it to our representatives directly, and then in addition, we're copying Westchester Public School Board.
And usually what those districts will do is say, we represent 98 school districts in the lower Hudson Valley, and it's a unanimous consent to.
I think that's where that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think that's the more important thing for them, right? Isn't it? Because then
I think there's
it's
value
It's already underway.
in the school board association having, you know, saying we got the support of all these districts and, you know, not just individuals.
I mean, we can adjust the resolution language if we want to approve it conceptually. We can tweak it to say that we join other advocacy efforts, including.
Yeah, because otherwise it just sounds like you're raising your hand and saying, oh, all these people are doing this anyway? Me too, right? It doesn't sound like we're taking any kind of leadership role in this. We're just providing an endorsement to something that's already being done.
Okay.
That's
All right, well, good suggestion. Okay. All right, so we're going to vote on that?
All right, so can I get a motion to approve this resolution? Can I get a second? All in favor? Okay. And I think there's another second one. There's a second resolution to look at.
Yes, there is. Okay, and this resolution is asking that we update COVID protocols based on clear metrics. And it goes through several different points that just, you know, COVID transmission is continuing and there's new variants. We recognize that. Key parts, I think, are that all parents and school communities are looking to update pandemic and school health requirements consistent with the health and safety of all of school buildings. And whereas the New York State Department of Health has changed guidance, often without prior notice, to school districts throughout the pandemic. That's a really important point because we know that's happened quite a bit. And then, whereas the second to the last paragraph there, whereas school boards of education superintendents rely on health professionals to provide guidance to ensure the health of students and staff in school settings. And whereas our communities and school leaders are looking for clarity on effective COVID-19 mitigation efforts and the conditions under which various protocols such as masking, quarantine, isolation, social distancing are or are not critical to the safety of our students and staff. And then we get to the therefore. Hendrick Hudson School District calls on the Governor and New York State Department of Health to issue clear science-based metrics that will determine what level of COVID protocols continue to be required in New York State public schools.
Any questions or comments?
So, I know we spoke a little bit about this because I had some questions, but I think it's good for the whole board to hear. What is the purpose of this? Should the state make a decision to drop a mandate or keep a mandate? What purpose does this resolution serve?
My understanding of it, my reading of it, is that it would serve to allow those decisions to drop or add a mandate to be based on science, on metrics. And then once there's those clear levels established, based on the science and based on numbers, then the districts will be able to have the knowledge, know what to advocate, you know, to have predictability. So everybody knows that when this certain level was reached, then we can take off our masks.
But that's the state. The state's going to decide if we could take off the mask.
They would determine what the levels need to be for it to be safe.
So then who enforces?
So a year ago-ish, feels like a decade, the former governor had put school communities into 3 different color zones based on infection rate. And there was a whole host of things that were supposed to happen. And the infection rate got so crazy so quick, he abandoned that quickly because no one could really catch up to what the metric was because no one knew what it was. It was just infection rate. What we're calling on the governor and the Department of Health to say, if you're going to reduce the mask mandate, if you're going to put that decision on each 723 school boards in the state, what are the criteria that those school boards should be using so there's some uniformity? Because our school district's only 22 square miles, we have people, majority of our teachers don't live in our school community. So we need to have a metric recommended by the health professionals, not necessarily by us. We shouldn't be making that decision as to how that could inform our judgment. Or if the governor is going to say, we want to have, whatever the metric is, fill in the blank. We want to have an infection rate of under 4% of every, every tested child between ages 5 and 18. Okay, then tell us that. So we all know that we should be getting tested regularly, or what the importance of being tested is, because that may mean you could take your mask off and not have to be socially distant. What I'm afraid of, and what the School Boards Association is afraid of, is that 700 plus school districts are going to go in 700 different directions without the Department of Health, who should be responsible for this, setting some parameters.
I can totally understand that. I guess my concern is that there could be a sway of, oh, the numbers are low, the kids can take off their masks. Oh, the numbers are high, let's put them back in masks. That's what I'm concerned about. And I know that there's a large portion of our community that's concerned about that as well. Like you said, I don't ever want it to become a school board decision, a decision that everybody has to make, because at some point I think we have to restore power to people to make decisions for themselves. So this resolution makes me uncomfortable. I understand that we want metrics, we want, all that information, but I do have concern over how long are we going to watch these numbers go up and down and string our children back and forth with masks, right? I think we can all agree that it's going to be a little bit of an emotional ride.
I think that metric is a metric we would be asking for. How long of a duration? Yeah, that would be the next layer. What are the criteria to take off your mask and not be socially distant? For how long do we need to maintain that? Who are the audience that we're testing? Adults, children?
This is assuming that the mandate doesn't drop in a few weeks.
Or even if it does.
So we would then want to implement something? Like, why wouldn't we follow the state's? If there's no order, there's no order.
We want to influence the state that if they're going to make a decision to keep them on or allow us to take them off, that there's uniformity statewide.
Gotcha.
You can go first.
I talked them up before.
So you want the state to make it, like we agree, we want the state to make a decision. We're not making a decision of having a policy. Or is that what this?
It would be the state creating guidelines with the Department of Health specifically, right? So the state Department of Health would be the ones creating the guidelines for the districts to know what the right thing is to do with health decisions.
I just had the same question as before. Are we the only ones doing this, or are there a whole bunch of other districts doing this too?
Yeah, this is, again, Westchester Putnam is the one who put this resolution, drafted it together. Districts within our region are being invited to also submit, something similar or use their template even, which is what we have up here. And then this is also advocating for these things. And the School Boards Association, the Council of School Superintendents is also
the State Superintendents Council, our Regional Superintendents Council, and I think I sent it to the board back in early January, sent a similar letter saying, don't just drop this on us. If you're going to drop it on us, then give us a metric that is uniform statewide, because otherwise we're going to have a debate on what we believe the metric should be, and our metric might be different than literally a mile down the road is a different school district, and they have a completely different. You know, that's not the core competency of our work, is to determine what the metrics are to keep a mask on or stay socially distant.
So do we think, again, it would just be helpful to put in some wording to say we're not doing this on our own? Because this letter, as it stands, looks like Hendrick Hudson is doing this on their own.
Well, there's power. If Senator Harkin were here, or Assemblywoman Galen, the greater the volume of information they receive from small groups, and then groups represent school districts, and then groups representing school districts is important. Okay. If we leave it just to our association and not pepper them on our own, I think we're missing an opportunity.
You know, I'm saying just reference the fact that there are other people doing this besides us.
Sure, we can change the resolution, you know, say we join other agencies, yada, yada, yada.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
I do appreciate consistency throughout the state, and that the State Department of Health should be setting the standard, but I am very concerned about asking for a locked-in metrics. I mean, we've been in a year and a half, almost actually 2 years now, of constant change between the initial virus, trying to figure out how it's transmitted. Is it by touch? Is it by air? How to try to cure people, how to vaccinate people, better cure people, new variant. I think to ask someone to lock into a metrics just to make everybody feel good is unrealistic. I like the consistency part, and I feel it should come from the state, but it should. I think it's better to leave it at the state level for the decision, instead of the state just give us metrics so we can figure it out ourselves. Is how I feel about this, because this is fluid and forever changing, and by the time they issue it, it'll be close to outdated, probably, the way the information changes on this. So I'd have to say, as is, I'm not in support of this.
I'm ready to add.
Any other questions?
Maybe are there changes that you'd like to see made to this that you can make it so that you would feel more comfortable supporting it? Any of you? This is our district's, you know, we don't have to take it or leave it. We could make changes.
I would be comfortable if we were asking for continued or better, not continued, better State Department of Health guidance on an ongoing basis, but not to give us a metric where we got to figure it out on our own.
No, the metric would prevent us from figuring out.
Yeah, but we're still going to be interpreting, and it's going to be outdated by the time we get it. Is my fear.
Yeah, I don't know that we can help that. You know, I don't know that there's anything we can do to control that. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of outdated guidance that's still out there from the state and CDC, and that gets revised when they get to it. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that we can have a resolution to say, you know, come up with a plan and stick to it and don't change your mind.
Well, it sounds like they're trying, you know, this is trying to get it out of the state hands and put it at, you know, you're saying we're fearing that they're going to put it down to our level. I'm saying just tell the state, no, keep it at the state level for the decisions. Don't let the districts make the decision on their own.
That's what I've been trying to do. Yeah, thank you for articulating. That's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you for articulating it so well. That it should never be kicked down to the local level. That no one here should be making these sort of decisions ever. So I don't know if I would support it either.
I see two board trustees on that side of the table shaking their heads. Do you want to refute that?
No.
I say
I
should not make those.
This means agreeing.
Yes,
Okay.
we agree. Yes, sorry.
All right, so why don't we work on the wording on this one and then bring it back again next time? Or?
Sure.
Can we do that?
It's a resolution that the board would pass, and so we can figure out what to do with it.
So what is the wording of what we're proposing? Like, what is the principle behind what we're going to propose instead of?
Scroll back one bit.
Because when I read it, and I 100% agree with Bill and what he said, I just don't think that there's a purpose for this resolution. Right? I don't know how.
Well, you could add on to the sentence and say, and prohibit school districts from making an independent decision.
So we're just asking them to have their own metrics.
But their metrics are going to be for us. The metrics are going to be for schools in New York State. For a school in New York State to not have to wear a mask, we say X.
But I think that, to Bill's point, things are so fluid with this, and we don't know what the next variant could be. Variants could be less, impactful, they could be more impactful. We don't know. And these things are going to be changing so quickly that for them to put out defined metrics, I think puts the local districts at risk.
From what I remember reading about this, it is intended to be fluid with the metrics too. I mean, that those are supposed to be adjustable as well, because it says in the very first line, they realize that the health professionals have developed vaccines, medical treatments, health protocols in order to combat COVID-19. Transmission continues with the evolutionary variants. It's just, I didn't feel that this was one set of metrics and we're done. It seemed to me like I was reading it to me that there was going to be additional things as the situation changed.
Yeah, just, based on what I've seen with the history of the state, is they're not good at getting things out on a timely basis, right? And, for us to be requesting them to do that is, I think, I don't think it's going to happen, right? So what is this resolution really going to accomplish? Okay, what are we trying to get from this resolution? Because if we're asking for metrics that are fluid and flexible and as timely, we're not going to get them as much as we would want.
That's better than them saying, okay, 700 school districts, you figure it out. I would rather
say something like that, like say, we'll advocate that, all decisions need to be at the state level, but we should not be making this. We can make decisions at the district level, but, the request for metrics on a timely basis, it's just, it's wasted.
We could wordsmith the resolution to make that point that that decision needs to be made and administered at the state level.
Yes. Which it is right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's just continuing what's already going on.
They don't have metrics for us at the
Right.
state level.
It's
That's
just
sort of
uniform.
saying on Friday, okay, you're going to do this on Monday.
That's the issue. Erie County and Buffalo has a lower infection rate than Westchester. If we were vice versa, Westchester has a lower infection rate than 10 other counties. Westchester should be saying there should be a metric to allow us to take our mask off or lift back toward normal.
So you're saying it shouldn't be a uniform decision. You're saying it should be at a more localized decision. But what we saw the last time the state did that was that it was a mess. Right? When Cuomo had all the different color codings for the different districts, and based on your infection rate, you might have a lockdown in that particular district. That didn't work out well at all. Right, because all that would happen is that people would go into the next location and do whatever they need.
Yeah, one of the issues, obviously our part of the state got hit first almost 2 years ago. And when the state was shut down, the rest of the state that didn't experience what we did threw their arms in. So what are you talking about? Why is this a broad brush approach? Just because they have a problem doesn't mean we should have a problem. At the time, there was very limited information. Then it switched. Our summer had a low infection rate, and the rest of the state was wild with infection rate. And then we started to learn a little bit about the virus and started to figure out maybe there should be a relationship between infection rate in your town, county, school district, whatever, and not have it be uniform. So only the state can tell a county health department what to do. So that may be the play. The play may be create metrics and allow each county health department, to mandate what the rules will be that will include their schools, public spaces, what have you. We don't know that. I think to have that level of specificity in a resolution narrows our advocacy to say, we just need metrics. They will flow to the county, and then the county, who we meet with every Monday, we talk about this stuff.
That should be clearer then. I understand the concept of regional metrics and regional implications versus city or some of those business districts that they originally had. the wording of this doesn't reflect what we just talked about.
All right, do you want to help work on the wording and then
I'm
we'll bring it
always,
back
you
next
know, I'm
time?
always happy.
I know, you're good
So-
at wordsmithing, so.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Volunteer. Well,
And Bill, you're volunteer too.
Can you send
You're
it,
voluntold.
when you wordsmith it, will you send it out so we can all review it?
Yep,
Well, yeah,
for everybody.
wordsmith it too.
Wait, I have a question. But I got the last resolution, we just talked about these things take a long time.
to become law, if they become law, some of those other.
So advocating, you think it will help with,
Decision.
right, but there's like gonna be decisions coming quickly.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Hopefully.
changes,
Hopefully.
updates. Do you have any, I know it's supposed to be February, now it's like March 2nd. Is that the next update from the governor on this topic?
I think she'll give an update when she's ready. What we're hearing is that March 4th, she would have some sort of either update or announcement. I think the fear is, what happens after spring break? Or winter break, I'm sorry. What happens after winter break in terms of infection rate? Because what we do know is after Thanksgiving and after Christmas and New Year's, we have a little spike. And so they don't know. Other states around us have created metrics to, reduce the masking or social distancing, so on and so forth, and that's better than nothing. And that's sort of the ask right now. Is give us something aspirational to communicate or share with our community. Say, if you don't like your mask, here's what we need to do to take it off. As opposed to the 7 of you guys voting on it.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah, no.
never.
Right. Yeah. Because right now there's zero metric. There's none. Yeah. Is a bad one better than none? I guess that's the question. Yeah.
Right.
All right, we can work on it.
All right, anybody else have anything for new business?
Oh, I did have one more thing.
Okay.
So I know we're going through a lot of change, but I just want to put it out there that I think we should start up the conversation about a later screen time, school starting time for the high school again. There's a lot of science behind older children having more time to sleep and being able to start the high school later while we're redoing all our transportation. Right now would be the perfect time to do that. So I just want to get that out there that if we are going to reconsider that, let's start talking about that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we're getting to a point of prioritizing our focus areas for the strategic plan. Certainly, there are focus areas around school climate, around educational excellence, those sort of things. And this certainly could be part of it. I know that we want to have a conversation around the schedule of how we use our instructional day, let alone when school starts and ends, and that certainly would be a good conversation to have as part of that effort.
Didn't we have a conversation about this not that long ago, and we had problems with just pushing the school day out because it created problems with
we reported back
extracurricular
some
activities with other districts because
Yeah.
you're working with other districts. You have a ball game after school with the other districts. There has to be some consistency.
Yeah, we had a brief report out, and Lisa, I don't know if it was through Westcott or some agency, did a quick survey to say who's considering it, why did you or why didn't you pursue it? And Bill's right, some of the biggest hurdles were around transportation, were around after-school clubs and activities. Also, wasn't in certain areas a whole lot of parent support because parents needed older children to supervise younger children, and vice versa. Young kids being out at the bus stop when it's cold and dark at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. That was just very anecdotal, but we could revisit that. Either that report that they gave us or if there's a new survey. But yes, Bill, you're right. We said here's what people have been thinking or why they haven't pursued it. Some of the initial hurdles. We wanted to wait to not bite off too many initiatives at once.
Yeah, it seemed like all of the districts that were able to implement that had very little or no busing. involved, so they can start all of their schools at the same time.
So is that it, so we're just letting it go?
Yeah, we're gonna forget it some more.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's important, you know, it's an important part of our teenagers' lives, yeah.
Thank you.
We're just rehashing what we found out last time. All right, I think that is it for new business. So we are moving on to our second audience comment section. I will not bore you with the whole protocol speech again. Do we have anybody speaking on non-agenda items this evening?
Our first speaker for non-agenda is Mr. Blanco.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure everybody's glad to see me after 10 p.m., but thank you for having me back. Dan Galinko, I'm a parent of one going on 3 kids in the district. So, Mr. Superintendent, I'll be the first person to acknowledge that I've been very hard in this forum. I'll also be the first to commend you for all of that effort and dedication you put into the community, on behalf of the community, to fix the budget all blown by the Indian Point closure. But the reason I keep coming back to this forum is that I want the same energy you put on the budget put on school safety. My fear is that if the demolition and pipeline safety question is settled, and the reason I fear that is because of what I see in public. Since the last meeting, I went back to every agenda since the beginning of 2020, and over that time period, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've only spoken about demolition twice. Last time was back in November, and that was only to rehash what we already knew about state funding. It was already public that we're getting some money for monitoring. So I'm telling again, we have a major deficit in confidence around the safety of the schools during the demolition, and we need you to be our advocate even if you think my concerns are BS. We want to see you asking hard questions of Hendrick, Allocate, PHMSA, NRC, and the rest of the alphabet soup. I'd be delighted to write the questions for you. Just let me know. If you're intent on keeping schools open near open-air demolition, why not wage a very public campaign against the state, NRC, Allocate, or others to upgrade school air filtration equipment to the very top of the line? I haven't met a single person that believes that no dust will leave the site during the demolition. Do you believe that? If you have any doubt about that, why not fight with us about this? What do you have to lose? Whose responsibility is it going to be to pay for deep cleaning of the school's efficient air quality emergency? Who's writing the evacuation plans if there's a pipeline rupture or unexpected air quality emergency during school hours? We should be asking the state and federal agencies to make those plans for us. I could go on with the questions that could have been asked of the panelists and presenters on the last Decommissioning Oversight Board meeting all the way back in October. We have a month until the next one. I'm begging you to be prepared and show some fight for the community like you did over the budget. Thank you.
Tanya, do you have another speaker?
To Mr. Neil McNeil.
I'm going to pull my mask down and follow our great governor, who always speaks without a mask at the podium. Per a statement from Governor Hochul, I quote.
Ms. McNeil, I'm sorry, but in school buildings, you do have to
She
keep your
was at
mask
a
on.
picture, you want to see it, with her in the school building with the kids with no mask on.
She's not here.
I know, well, I'm just following her lead. So,
Ms. McNeil, please put your mask back on. I'm sorry.
and also the people that watch at home, there's hearing impaired that have difficulties.
Ms.
watching
McNeil,
TV,
please put
can't
your mask
speak.
back on.
Okay. Her statement from Governor Hochul, I quote, "My daughter had a meltdown about having to put sneakers on to go to kindergarten," the governor said Friday during a press conference after being asked about a timeline for removing mask mandates in schools. She got used to wearing sneakers in school. They adapt better than adults do. This quote shows how out of touch our governor is with parents of the state, and the data now clearly documented even by the mainstream media shows the mental and social toll on our children. Learning loss, cognitive delays, lack of emotion, recognition, depression, anxiety, dental issues, and more. Maybe there are parents who have kids that are resilient. However, my family did not experience that, and for the families that have had issues over the last 2 years, we should not be dismissed. I find it ironic that last week I received an email from this district asking for my assistance in advocating for student mental health funding. So, is the governor wrong on this one? Didn't she just say kids are resilient? Is she not listening to the educators finally calling for action regarding the mental health issues and the detriments caused by the state's policies on our children? Now, 2 years later, all of the schools have recognized these issues and are calling for action because I quote from the district email I received, all schools have seen significant increases in student mental health issues since the start of the pandemic. Really significant increases. I'd like to say this district didn't care when our family reached out numerous times for help. Now I see that it's only a concern regarding the students' mental health when money is involved. Now you want me to do my part, even though you couldn't do your part when we needed it most. Just like our board and administration, following unlawful Department of Health determinations to keep our children masked per CDC guidelines, otherwise you might lose your COVID funding, state funding, or if you speak up as a board, you might lose your seats. It's not about our children, it's about the money, and it's disgraceful that this is where we are at with the public education system. I also find it ironic that last week you were sending out emails about the significant increase in student mental health, and yet this week I heard that the district was moving forward with the Princeton plan. Our children are still not back to normal. Day by day, they are trying to get through this 2-year crisis that obviously has taken a toll on them. Why can't, for once, our board and the administration put our children first and let them heal? They need to heal. We are praying that soon the kids will be able to finally see their teeth with the front
Ms.
smile.
McNeil, your time is up. This evening?
No speakers this evening.
I'm sorry?
There are
No.
no.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to close the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor?
All right.
Our next meeting will be on
You were
March
asking about time.
2nd, or 3rd?